Hello everyone, welcome back to the Maverick channel, and here we talk about real-world use cases of digital currencies. Now, today we want to talk about app chains. This could easily be the trend for the next bull run or the next phase of development, of serious development in the cryptocurrency space. So we're going to look at something called app chains, which is something that might usurp the very influential technology called smart contracts. We might see the emergence of something called application-specific blockchains that are modular. Now, if you don't understand anything I just said, we're going to explain that in this video, so stay tuned for the whole thing. So welcome guys. Now, I've been trying to wrap my head around these things called application-specific blockchains, and it so happens that this concept has been around since 2018 and even before that. It's seriously being fronted by the adoption of the Cosmos blockchain because of its flexibility, modularity, and its ability to allow developers to develop things around what their specific use cases are because of its because if you look at Ethereum, it has a Ethereum virtual machine, or it has a virtual machine which limits development to the security provided by the blockchain, or the finality and the consensus provided by the blockchain. But the main difference is that with Cosmos, you're provided with three main categories of technology, which is the Tendermint, the ABCI, and the interconnectivity standard, which is the IBC. So with these three, you create, or there's a realization of this layer 0 infrastructure on top of which you can build layer 1 technology. Now, with those layer 1 blockchains that you can build, you can then on top, you could call them as hubs, because the Cosmos blockchain, the way it works, it has this hub and spoke model. The spoke means essentially you have these application chains, which we're going to talk about, which are in a way spoken for by the hubs, and that's where the hub and spoke model comes from. So now, on top of this layer 0 infrastructure, if you build the layer 1 infrastructure, you can build these application chains. So these layer 1s, you can consider them as hubs, or you can consider them as hubs, and then the application chains, you can refer to them as zones. Now, these hubs can talk to themselves, pass information between themselves, pass cryptocurrencies, messages, all kinds of things. So you don't just use bridges to communicate within these hubs, but you can actually pass information between these, and that's where the revolutionary technology is. Now, on top of these layer 1s, because of the sovereignty of the Cosmos ecosystem, first of all, the stack on top of which you build it's open source. Essentially, you can take it and build whatever you want. You're not limited to anything. And then the layer 1 technology that you build has that interoperability standard. Anyone, a developer, can build on top of that using their own sovereign chain, but they can leverage the security of your blockchain. So they can leverage your security, they can leverage your validators, which falls into security, they can leverage the finality of your blockchain, so they can just focus on these applications to perform a specific task. Now, where these applications are way better than a smart contract, at least as we see them developing, is that you're building essentially what we call a blockchain, but should we call them like a tiny blockchain? And we're going to look at some of the advantages that come with that. So this little tiny blockchain, if we were to refer to it, can tap into some of the security models but at the same time, it can also morph and evolve into its own massive infrastructure, as we're going to see with some of the examples that we're going to talk about. Now, if you're still not yet too clear about what is going on, I'll just essentially take you through some of the notes that I've written a little bit to understand what this is, because I had to read a whole bunch of things to try and understand. So an app chain, or an application specific blockchain, they also spread out in other blockchains like Avalanche and Polkadot, as we're going to see. But we're going to also focus a lot on the Cosmos ecosystem, because that's where we see much more practicality, or much more relevant use cases like the YDX, the Osmosis Zone, the Fetch.ai hub, and things like that, and the Cosmos hub itself. So app chains are increasingly becoming more popular standards as opposed to building smart contracts on shared blockchains. Why does this happen? Because an app chain is application specific, and I like to also see them as they're sort of modular. Of course, they're modular because the Cosmos blockchain allows you to build these modular infrastructures infrastructures, like hubs essentially, that have their own code but then can talk to themselves. So they maintain that sovereignty as well within there, and they maintain the security, and then you can create different shared models, maybe different revenue share models as this space will evolve. And if you've read the Cosmos 2 white paper, you can understand to see how some of these revolutions will be. So for example, modularity, we looked at that. And then there's something called state machines. So a state machine is where it's essentially an algorithm. Now, this is going to actually put into perspective what these app chains do or what they can do. Now, a state machine is sort of like an algorithm that shows you a possibility of infinite possibilities that can exist in one state if you choose, or if you program it to be, or if you choose one particular state, you can choose to be in that specific state amongst an infinite number of possibilities. Now, that's where app chains can be. So as this space evolves in the future, we'll see these blockchains that can exist for one application, but then can also exist as one application, then reform back to the original form, and then exist in a specific application or form to perform or execute specific tasks. But for now, essentially what app chains are seen like is you have a specific blockchain that can do a specific task, so that you don't have to spread out. You basically focus all the energy on that particular task. So they have that ability to be state machines in a way. They have the ability to be modular, and also they can utilize these layer 1 blockchains, as we see, because you can build them on top of other blockchains. Now, some of the advantages, you will see that even if you're leveraging validators of another blockchains, app chains have their own token and validator stake. Now, not only can you leverage the validator stake of another blockchain, but these little app chains, which we're saying will essentially usurp the functionality of smart contracts, you can actually build your own validator state, and you can build your own security and your own sovereignty and standard models as you evolve. Maybe you started out a small company or a small application, and this application, and actually some of these exist. I'll show you some examples of some of these use cases, and I think you'll be mind blown. Some of them already talked about them, but I'll show you a very good example to put things into perspective. So if you're a developer, you're afforded much more flexibility, as we've explained, and you can choose your programming language as well. And this also falls into the flexibility of the Cosmos blockchain. You know, some of these blockchains are built using the Go language, but we're seeing some developments where you can build these smart contracts, or there's a software development kit on the Cosmos blockchain, which allows you flexibility to easily spin up your own blockchain, and also in different languages. And you can see some developments in JavaScript, and networks like Fetch.ai are also building a infrastructure around Python. So if you're a Python developer, you may actually be able to spin up or interact with their technology using the Python language. I think this type of flexibility is starting to spread out, and we're going to see some major developments, as opposed to something like the Ethereum side, which is, of course, it has the most liquidity, but it's limited by that linear nature of the Ethereum virtual machine. So performance as well, we can see that because of this communication and the ability to communicate within different models, there's a tremendous performance, like a mesh model of sorts, where you can have different products communicating in different sort of ideologies or different functions, but at the same time understand how they're operating, because this is programming, this is languages, and computers can talk to themselves in that kind of way. So performance, you only have to define the transaction types and the state transition. Now, where the performance can also be leveraged so well is that if you're building this application on top of another layer 1 blockchain, you don't necessarily have to worry about the security, the consensus, the finality, but you can just really focus on that application and what it can do. So that's a very big thing. So security and sovereignty are extremely important because you have that flexibility as a programmer. So some blockchains that actually use app chains, we're going to look at Polkadot as well. Polkadot has parachains. They're developing these things called parachains. Now the parachains, I like to compare them to kind of like hubs on the Cosmos, in the Cosmos ecosystem. They're connected to a central blockchain, which is the relay chain, and that you may consider that as the layer 0 chain in the Polkadot ecosystem. Now, as I explained before, in the Cosmos ecosystem, when you combine Tendermint, the ABCI, and which is the application blockchain interface, and the IBC, which is the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol, you develop this layer 0 technology, which is quite superior. Now in Polkadot, you have that relay chain, which serves a purpose like that. Now in Polkadot, you have these relay chains. For example, the Polkadot itself, Kusama, some of you have heard of Kusama. Those may be considered as the layer zeros. Then the parachains, there's some like Akala, then Litten Tree. Now Akala serves as a DeFi hub for the Polkadot network, and Litten Tree serves as a cross-chain identity aggregator. And those that have been looking around in the cryptocurrency space, you understand that identity is a very, very big deal, and it's becoming a standard as well. Just like smart contracts and DeFi and NFTs are becoming a standard, the ability to implement a sort of identity such that people don't have to look at these very long numbers as their addresses is becoming a very big deal in the blockchain space to simplify the user interface. So Polkadot is trying to tackle that in its own way. And when you go back to Cosmos, which is one of the blockchains that really fronted some of these technologies, the Cosmos zones, they operate as a hub and spoke model. And we already explained that the zones are essentially could be these app chains, and the hubs are the centerpieces to which these app chains connect to, and then those hubs can communicate with other hubs, which creates a really interesting mesh kind of structure. I'll read for you, or I'll display for you, this kind of text that will put things kind of into perspective. Now, zones are Cosmos speak for application-specific blockchains. Each zone is a spoke connected to a hub, and hubs can be connected with other hubs. Together, this ecosystem of connected hubs and zones makes up the Cosmos network, or what is commonly referred to as the internet or blockchain. So guys, you can see in the wording itself, how impactful this can be. So zones, you can see examples like DYDX, which is one of the most fundamental shifts of technology from one of the most influential blockchains to something like Cosmos, which brought a lot of attention. Then the Osmosis zone, which is one of the most sophisticated decentralized exchanges that we've seen, because it allows that communication within pretty much all blockchains or all ecosystems within the Cosmos ecosystem that have enabled this inter-blockchain communication standard. And then so examples like hubs, the Atom Hub itself, and then the Fetch Hub itself, which I like to talk about. Atom Hub, they're releasing their Cosmos 2 white paper. You can read. They're looking at this interlocator and all these ways of allocating funds to different projects, and also leveraging the interchain security and seeing how to monetize things like that. Then the Fetch Hub is really focusing on machine learning, autonomous economic agents, and multi-agent systems, and bringing all this technology, all this theoretical technology that we've read about, bringing it into practical fruition. So it's not just buzzwords, but this is actual implementation. Now, the example I wanted to show you is what you can see displayed on your screen, the Mobix technology. So these guys, Mobix, they're under a company called Datarella. They actually built some serious technology on top of the Fetch Hub, and they just recently really connected onto the Fetch Hub, which brings into perspective this whole application-specific blockchain thing. Now, what's interesting about Mobix is that they're focusing on a bunch of things like micro-mobility. So your devices without, internal combustion engines being able to operate in urban cities, and then self-sovereign identities, and then move to earn technologies. They're developing this marketplace of a sort of self-sustainable or sustainable, that's within this sustainable trend of green living and really reducing the carbon emission in the earth. So we're looking at an application which is supposed to be like an application blockchain evolving into this massive ecosystem lying on top of the Fetch ecosystem. So leveraging the quality validators of the Fetch ecosystem, hence leveraging that security that comes with that. So that's an example of an application chain that's massive, leveraging a layer 1 technology that's also massive, that's built on top of this layer 0 technology. Now, when you spread out beyond the Cosmos ecosystem, examples, those that are much into Avalanche. Avalanche has its subnets as examples of that infrastructure that's placed there to leverage this application specific blockchain area. So Avalanche, it's known as subnets. Then Polygon itself is launching these things called supernets, which is also leveraging a similar technology, or supposed to bring forth a similar technology. And also the Binance Smart Chain, which leverages these technologies of Tendermint and basically the Cosmos based technologies. Anchor Protocol, in March 2022, Anchor announced that it worked closely with Binance Smart Chain to release the first Binance Smart Chain application sidechain, which is known as BAS, which is a testnet alongside Stellar Network and Nodrill. So you see, some of these networks, some of the biggest networks in the world, are really looking at this technology and the use case of it, and I'm almost convinced that it's going to be at the forefront of some of the actual innovations in the blockchain space, as the technology is looking for market fit, it's looking for what is coming next, what is the next trend, and what is most sustainable over a long run. I think this kind of flexibility and modularity and ability to create these self-sovereign chains that are not so power intensive, that are not so power demanding, that are capable of performing very efficiently specific tasks, I think that's one of the things that's going to lead some of the trends in the cryptocurrency space. So guys, I want to link some of the references that I read, that I came across as I was studying about these application specific blockchains, so that you can understand a little better. Maybe you can also start developing in areas that concern you, so that you can understand these technologies much better. Guys, I hope you learned something in this short video. I hope you picked up something, and I urge you to do more research, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.